Hello, Samara. Thank you once again for meeting with me.
Yeah, no problem. All right, so
Yeah,
you
so
want to go ahead
yeah,
and dive in?
yeah.
Yeah.
What do I think about this lesson? So I did say a lot of this in the reflection. Honestly, yeah, I was thinking about it a lot, and as I was writing the reflection, of course, which is the idea. And yeah, it definitely wasn't the best lesson I've ever taught. It certainly wasn't the worst lesson I ever taught, and so I said that in the reflection. Yeah, and I know I touched on a couple of the areas that, I know that I spend a lot of time talking. I guess that's probably the main issue that I had with it. And I was like, and I said it again in the reflection, but I really do think I just bit off more than I could chew. It's like I'm trying to teach a game that I grew up playing. I first started playing, I think I even said in the class, I first played baseball when I was like 5 years old. And so
Hmm.
I've known the rules since about then. It probably took about like one season to kind of get all of the rules. And so I'm coming at this from, the position of, who once was an American boy and now American man, who is very familiar with the rules of baseball. And I'm trying to teach it to a bunch of kids some of whom don't really speak English all that well and
Hmm.
have and even the ones who do speak English well have like either no experience or very, very, very limited experience with the game. And so trying to teach that in those circumstances, I like I said, I just bit off more than I could chew. I'm trying to teach in 20 minutes or so this really complicated game with a lot of rules and a lot of vocabulary. And now we're gonna, play kickball, which of course the rules of kickball are taken from baseball with some exceptions, which I do talk about in the class. But yeah, it was just like a lot that I was trying to do, uh,
Hmm.
to I think varying degrees of success. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Uh-huh. And for an introduction class, I feel like you were very critical on yourself for how much you had to talk. But I think at the same time, as an introduction class, it was fine. Like it is the introduction, there is new vocabulary, and that just is kind of
yeah,
part of learning something new. You have to learn the
yeah,
new words, you have to do that. And so that actually brings us right into like the first standard that we're looking at, which is standard 4 about content knowledge. And it's
yeah,
looking for your representations, explanations, and the language that you use. And so right off, I was happy to see you using the whiteboard for such a lesson that needs
mhm,
so much explanation.
yeah,
And you weren't just talking to them, using your words, expecting them to be following. You actually had the whiteboard, so you drew the picture, you're writing
mhm,
down things, and that really does help them focus. And there was one point when you made an annotation about how like you could tell that they were struggling to understand, but you just trusted that they would get it more once they went playing. And at that point, I made a note of why don't you just even stop the lesson there and say, like, I understand you're struggling, but you're going to get it. And then minutes later, you did that. And
yeah,
so I think that, like, small, like, okay, yeah, you guys, this is a lot. I'm here with you. We're going to learn the words, but then you're going to get it. That little encouragement helps them to continue listening and to be
yeah,
invested, which you did. And so it was kind of funny. Like I wrote in my notes that you should do that, press play again, and then you did it. And I was like, okay,
yeah,
well, that was what I thought. So you did a good
yeah.
job with that. Um,
Thank you.
a lot of the standards with content knowledge expect that you brought in technology into the classroom. And because I know your teaching situation, I'm making an assumption that you don't have a projector in the classroom or
Yeah.
in the gym
No, there's no projector in the gym. Yeah,
or any really access because you don't have a smart
yeah.
board.
Yeah, no smart board. Yeah, I mean we're limited on our smart boards, and yeah, so there was just yeah, at least if I were in the gym, yeah, there was just not really an option.
Yeah. So that's what I was assuming. And my suggestion for like, because I'm guessing you're going to be teaching the same class a couple more times with
Yeah,
the
yeah,
different grade fives. My suggestion would be to talk to the homeroom teachers and see if you could start your PE class
good
in
idea.
homeroom And
Yeah.
then you would have their whiteboards, their projectors,
Yeah.
and you can use that. And then even just the novelty of having teacher Brett come in teaching class
Yeah.
in PE, that would be kind of exciting at first, and even just like
Yeah.
get them more into it. And for this particular lesson, you could have a clip or different clips of football that would help, or not football, kickball, that would help put what you're talking about into their heads, give them visual representations.
That's a good idea.
And
Yeah, I'll keep that in mind.
if you limited that to like 15, 20 minutes, then bring them downstairs and they can play.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good idea.
I mean, I know that it takes a bit more planning, but I also feel like it's very doable.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
That's reasonable for sure.
yeah. Okay. So that was one of my main, not even critiques, just like my main notes when we were going through this. You did a good job on building on students' prior knowledge. There were multiple times that you checked to see if any of them had any like experience with kickball or baseball. You talked about the different skills that they've been learning. And then you even had that, you talked about it in your reflection more, you calling it a PBL. In the video, I didn't know if it was going to become a project. I thought it was more just like a question. And so I wrote that could have been like a think, pair, share of like, okay, you guys, I'm going to give you like 5 minutes. Think about a game that you could create, and then turn to your friend and tell them. And just like a 5-minute little thing.
Yeah,
some of them won't do it, but some of them will. And but I liked that. That was a good use of building on their prior knowledge. And then your instructional resources, again, this relies heavily on technology, but I was happy to see the use of the whiteboards. And then I had written down asking if you had like plates or bases. But then as I was looking closer, you do have like the red circles.
Yeah, they're called spot markers. Yeah, that was what we used.
So you have
for, that. Yeah, I use those. Is it
possible to get bases? I don't even know.
I'm not so sure that, like, I mean, there might be something. Yeah, it's like that's from what we had. It was just like that was just kind of like an easy alternative. They're definitely not as big as like regular bases, of course, and so I would probably give some leeway. It's like, oh, you didn't quite step on the base, but you were like close to it or whatever.
Like,
but because I mean, they really are. They're about that big, so they're not huge. They're definitely smaller. But for what we have, it works.
Yeah. Yeah. Once I like focused and I saw that, I was like, okay, that's good. I don't know what the budget is. If you could order them, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. I have to look into that, but
I mean, that's obviously not something that's going to happen this year, but
could be
sure. If they give you more money, be like, hey, let's get bases.
I wouldn't mind that, but yeah.
Yeah. And then standard 5 is mostly about your application of content. And that's looking at how like you're using what you're teaching, which clearly you got them playing the game. And for what this lesson was, I can't think of a better way to apply the content.
Yeah.
Obviously, Teach Now wants you to be using technology. One, I gave you proficient, even though it asked for technology, because I'm not a PE teacher, and so this is maybe just me being limited in experience, but I don't really know how to have the kids applying, like using their learning with technology in PE. I don't actually have suggestions for you with that. And so I feel like playing the game is the best way.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. And like, that's the way that I do the assessments anyway. It's just like, okay, I went through, I explained everything, we worked on the skills. And I mentioned it in the class, but one of the nice things about teaching this is that I didn't have to focus. Like once they got the rules down, we're like ready to play, because the throwing, the catching, the kicking, running, that's all stuff we'd done earlier in the year. And so I even made the points like there is a logical progression as to like why we are doing this now, where it's like, okay, we've already learned these skills and now we're putting it into practice. And so kind of the same thing where it's like, okay, I've explained all of the rules and it's a lot of vocabulary and all that. Now we're just going to go in the field and we're going to start. And
so I mean, I feel like you did a good job of that, and
thank you.
That's what to do.
Yeah.
Like I honestly can't think of a way to do a technology other than having like the Chromebooks in there, and they have to fill out an
Yeah.
exit ticket on the Chromebook, which would
Yeah.
just
That
take so
would be,
much time, and it
yeah.
just doesn't make sense. And so I feel like it's more of not applicable with the technology part. But then there is a part about multiple perspectives and like bringing in the different cultures of the kids and how you did that. And for that part, I think that that could have been incorporated in the teaching part of the class, where you're
Yeah.
talking about when you're just introducing baseball and kickball, because it kind of goes together. Even though it's
Yeah.
kickball, you're
Yeah.
kind of teaching a lot of baseball at the same
I'm
time.
basically teaching baseball. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you could have had a moment where you're asking, okay, is there anything close to this in China? Does your culture
Yeah.
have a game that you play? Because, I mean, cricket is not really a game that we play in
No,
America,
not at
played
all.
all
Yeah.
over. And the rules are quite different, but it's, like to even have them thinking about that and sharing games that they have that is
Yeah.
similar could
Yeah.
spark an interesting conversation for them.
Yeah, for sure. That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know that there are, so Thailand is definitely not one of them, but I know
Mhm.
that there are part, like for instance, Japan, baseball is
Mhm.
really big in Japan, it's really big in
Japan.
Taiwan. So there's like a lot of, and I think there's some, like the only ones who even knew maybe a little bit were Koreans, because some,
Okay. Okay.
like Korea, it's like not quite as popular as like Japan or Taiwan or whatever, but it is, baseball is somewhat popular in Korea. Um,
Mhm.
but I mean, but yeah, simply put, the fact like in this part of the world, it's just not really a very popular game.
Right.
And
Mhm.
so, yeah, it's like I'm like I said in the reflections, like I'm starting from scratch to like teach these kids something that like they have no idea. And so I mentioned, like, for me as an American, like I did grow up playing this. And so, and I said this to a couple of teachers, and we all agreed, like a couple of American teachers, like in PE class when I was a kid, like kickball is probably either my favorite game or among my favorite games, because
Yeah.
it's just a really fun game. And I knew that's like why I wanted to teach them, with the guys, a lot of rules, it's gonna take a little bit, but once we actually get this down and play it, it is a lot of fun. And I know you guys
Yeah.
will like it. And there was a point, I can't remember exactly like what minute in the video or whatever, but it was you, and he's the bigger kid. And he kicked, and as he's like running towards the camera, he's got this like big smile on his face. And when I was going through and editing the video, seeing that and seeing the kids, like
Mhm.
their genuine reactions, like, oh no, like it was like they were actually really starting to get into it, and they did have a lot of fun. And like when someone would kick the ball, they're like, oh, you can hear them like yelling and everything. And I was like, okay,
Yeah.
all of this, like, frustration, but just like difficulty, I guess you would say, I had in teaching all of the rules and the vocabulary and
Yeah.
everything, then seeing their reaction to the game and that they're like legitimately enjoying it was like, okay, that was all
Mhm.
worth it, because now they're actually like able to play, rather than me just like, all right, guys, let's spread out in the field and I'm just going to explain this on the fly and nobody knows what's going on and everything like that. And it would have just been like a total mess. So it's like I kind of had to do it that way, even though it was
Yeah,
like
you did.
biting off more I could chew. But yeah, in the end, like just seeing their reactions, it's like, okay, guys, like this is a lot. Can see that you started to get it towards the end. And then as we're going to play, the next couple class periods, like I really do think that they're going to actually start to get it down and really hopefully enjoy the game. That's obviously, as a PE teacher teaching you a new
Mhm.
game, I really hope you enjoy it. I hope you have fun with it. And so I think
Mhm.
we're close to that, if not already there. And I think within one or two more class periods, I think they'll be there where they're like actually get the rules are like kind of cemented. And there might be some confusion here and there, but overall I think it'll be good.
Yeah, no, I think for sure. And I mean, we talked about this before. I was like the most, or the not the most, the least athletic kid in my classes, like all the time. But I liked kickball too, because
Yeah.
there's not the pressure of baseball with the whole ball and bat. You have a bigger
Yeah.
ball, plus you're kicking, and it's a bit easier, and so it's a lot more fun. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it is a fun game, and they are gonna like it. And it was nice to see that, to see Bonnie kind of
Yeah.
running at the, to see
Yeah.
Cooper running. I was just
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
no, this is really good. This is
Yeah.
good. So
And they
yeah,
were
I
enjoying it.
think he
So
did a good
yeah.
job. And I mean, I'm sure like as a PE teacher, it feels a little unnatural to have to talk and teach explicitly in front of
Yeah.
a board, but I think it is necessary, and
Yeah, I agree.
something that you have to do when you're doing those introduction classes. And so not
Yeah.
to like kick yourself so hard about it. maybe having clips where they can see it with their eyes
Yeah.
would help make the connection before they play a little bit
Yeah.
stronger.
That's a good
Um,
point. I could see that. And that's where the technology would, of course, come in. So that does make sense.
yeah. Yeah, if they give you a huge budget, you could just ask for a smart board in the,
Be great.
but that would be so dangerous. You know how bad that it would
Oh
just
man.
get like,
It would
kicked.
not be, yeah. Yeah, it would end up getting messed up or somehow throughout the year. But
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So
I could see how that would
maybe
go.
not a good idea. The last thing, this isn't actually part of the rubric, it's just more of a question I have. Do you have a call to attention that you use consistently? I mean, I know you have the whistle, but how do
Yeah.
you get attention?
The whistle is the probably the main one I use. I haven't used it in a little bit, but I'll sometimes do the clapping too, where I'll just like, clap in a pattern and then they follow back. And
Mhm.
then, do that a few times. And then by the time everybody's, you know, has clapped along with me, then it's usually pretty quiet.
Mhm.
But it's hard when I'm in the gym because
Mhm.
like clapping in the gym, it's like, yeah, it's that the acoustics in there are terrible. And
Yeah.
so it's just like it doesn't have the same effect as it would in like a classroom. And so the whistle is the one that I guess I kind of like use. I just
Uh-huh.
rely on it more than any other. And so, but yeah, having a call to attention is probably a good idea. And not probably, it definitely is a good idea. Other than the whistle, I mean. So yeah, that's something that I will definitely think about.
I mean, I think the whistle is fine and it makes sense with PE. There were two parts when they were playing when the foul happened and then the
Mm,
double, and they were good teaching points. And you did do the whistle, and I feel like a fourth of the kids were looking at you, but then
yeah,
there was just them still playing. And so having some sort of way to be like, okay, we're stopping. I'm going to use, because it was a good teachable moment.
yeah,
But then I also was thinking, like, sure, we can let those teachable moments pass in the moment. In the next class, you can go over like the
yeah.
foul and you can
That's
go over the
yeah.
double. But
Yeah. Yeah,
having,
and even yeah, just like referring back to like, okay, do you guys remember when this kid, this student
um,
kicked and went out of bounds? Like, okay, that was a foul, and yeah, the double and all that. Yeah, that's good. I will definitely refer back to those
yeah.
in the
And I mean, you
future
can use
lessons.
your whistle and have like a long whistle means this, or sure,
Yeah,
I don't know. You could have
yeah,
like
yeah,
different
it's true.
whistles for different things. That would be started more at the beginning of the year and just keep going with it. But
Yeah,
yeah, but I
yeah,
think that was all that I wrote down. I think overall it was good. I felt like you were a bit critical of yourself with how much you had to teach explicitly, but
yeah.
I would just, let yourself off the hook a little bit. That's
Thank you.
kind
I
of what
appreciate that. Yeah, that was just
Mhm.
me, like, again, reflecting on and just being like, "Man, I talk so much," and, like, all these words that, like these are English language learners, and I'm, like, talking about, like, innings, and it's just kinda like, okay and, like, words that are, like, specifically baseball words, like, innings is a word that you literally never use outside of baseball or
Yeah.
kickball, so it's like, okay, how much was it really worth it for me to, like, teach this vocabulary? But at the same time, it's like, well, if I'm gonna teach it the right way, and so I guess that was kinda
Mhm.
my thinking, and so on that part, I think it's good, but
Mhm.
it ended up with me just talking a lot and just
Mhm.
seeing like and you can even hear them like, "Do you guys am I with everybody?" And like I think it was you and again, he was just like, "Kind of." And I was like, "Okay, not
Yeah.
exactly the answer I was looking for." But again,
Mhm.
then once we started to play, like that was when it really all started
Yeah.
to kind of come together. So
Yeah. And
yeah.
you can just build off of it. It was an introduction class. And so
Yeah.
next class, you can have those words written on the whiteboard, see who can
Yeah, that's a
remember
good
much,
idea.
and just keep building
Yeah.
on their prior knowledge.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
Yep. Anything you want to say before we end this?
No, I mean, I think I kind of touched on everything. Like, ultimately, the thing I will say was like it was a lot of me talking, but again, at the end of class, starting to see it's like, okay, it, things started to click and it was
Yeah.
slow. And like some of the kids, like they kicked and they didn't know they were quite supposed to run or whatever, like that kind of thing. And I was like, okay, guys, make sure you run. But I really do think that after probably like one more game, give or take, or even just like not even full game, but just like probably 10 minutes of them playing again, they'll really, it's like, all right, guys, I'll make sure that like the people who really understand the game, like those people kick first, and
Hmm.
and and then go from there. So it's like okay, if you're not quite sure about this, watch this person because they're going to do, and then using the other students as an example for what you're
Yeah,
supposed to
exactly.
do. And then, and of course, like giving them the option to ask questions as well. Because
Mhm.
realizing that, again, 20-minute or so lesson of me talking is not going to be nearly enough for them to, digest the game that took me, years to learn. So, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So, but I mean, overall, like maybe I was a little bit hard on myself, but I do think that it was a mostly successful lesson, just like with just, a lot in it. So, yeah.
Mhm. I'm curious, how many more times are you going to be teaching this exact lesson? Have you taught all of the fifth graders the introduction
Uh,
lesson?
I have taught them all, yeah. And
Okay.
so yeah, it's like yeah, so I did and so yeah, and I mean it was like yeah, I think overall it was pretty good and I definitely did get better at it as I was teaching. This was the first fifth grade
Yeah.
lesson that I taught.
Yeah.
So
That
yeah,
was
yeah.
fantastic.
So that had a lot to do with it too. So like, yeah, this of the four fifth grade classes I have, this was the first one. And so yeah, by the fourth, I was like, okay, I got this. And I can like,
Yep.
and I definitely like, streamlined it. And I realized like there were things to start with, like vocabulary words to start with. And so yeah, it was like kind of, yeah, it's like, all right, this is not yeah, it was just like a way for me. It's like, all right, I'm just gonna record this lesson and just see how it goes. And
Yep.
and yeah. So but I mean overall I think by the end, yeah, I definitely got better at teaching it for sure.
Exactly. So,
So, yeah.
okay.
Alright.
Well, I think
Okay.
we've covered it all.
Okay. Alright, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Mhm.